Over the years, use of Washington State's three largest national parks, Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic, has intensified. More people are hiking more trails, they're climbing more mountain peaks, and picnicking in more meadows. At the same time, park budgets are declining, and rangers are doing more with less. Equally important is the fact that future generations, especially those who reside in urban communities, are becoming more distant from these national parks. Some are unable to get to the parks and unaware of all that there is to discover. Washington's National Park Fund raises funds for youth programs, visitor experiences, volunteerism, stewardship, and scientific research. We were founded in 1993 by a group of passionate parks people with a top priority of educating young people from urban communities because they will one day be the stewards of these beautiful public lands. Washington's National Park Fund is bringing more young people of all backgrounds into Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks so they can learn to embrace our nation's public lands as well as care for them over the years to come. We also provide support for researching the patterns and stability of flora and fauna. Flora, or the flowers, offer brilliant swatches of color as they come into bloom throughout the spring and summer months. And the fauna, or the wildlife, reach deep down inside all of us as a true sign of freedom. Thankfully, our nation hasn't tamed the wildest of beasts. We work closely with hundreds of volunteers and partners each year. Together, we preserve the park's meadows, trails, beautiful mountaintops, and valleys. By bringing in specially trained leadership, who then train and oversee volunteers from corporations, foundations, community groups, and youth organizations, we're maximizing philanthropists' dollars. Over the next 10 years, caring for Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks will require more volunteer time, more thoughtful strategic planning, and more widespread involvement than ever before. Washington's National Park Fund is working to expand on all of these areas and more. We're aligning our efforts with those of the National Park Service's Call to Action, a strategic initiative guiding our national parks through 2016. We're working very hard as we expand awareness of Washington's National Park Fund through aggressive marketing and outreach efforts. And knowing that the care of our public lands falls on the shoulders of future generations, we have outreach to schools and youth organizations as an ongoing and top priority. We know that when we invest donors' dollars in the parks, who then use those gifts to partner closely with youth organizations, gifts have a much stronger rippling out effect as more lives are touched and goals are met. All that we do is based on careful study and strategic planning. We strive to fall in line with each park's general management plan. Consideration towards the National Park Service's call to action is also well thought out as projects are funded. Today, we're working hard to achieve the greatest return on investment by reaching out to the thousands of individuals who care deeply about these three parks. By mobilizing them with our expanded guest donation program, ambassadors programs, and town hall meetings, we're mobilizing more boots on the ground that in turn benefit these three beautiful parks. Bringing passionate parks people together, educating them about the priorities of the parks, and asking them to go out and share the news and needs is the best form of maximizing our effectiveness. Not surprisingly, many want to be a part of all that's underway. Each fall, park superintendents carefully review proposals that are submitted by their staff for Washington's National Park Fund consideration. This ensures that they're consistent with the park's general management plan as well as the national call to action. As funds are raised and awarded, staff members submit reviews back to the fund summarizing both their challenges and their successes. This summer, the board and staff will convene in the parks for its strategic planning process, with an eye on aligning our efforts with those of the call to action. Often, the park's meadows are trampled by unknowing visitors. They're now being carefully and lovingly restored by hundreds of volunteers who are planting native seedlings that pop to life each spring. The Elwha River restoration is a perfect case in point. Seedlings from native species are being planted now as the Elwha Dam comes down. The outcomes are extremely visible. Our time-lapse films demonstrate this on a weekly basis. Washington's National Park Fund is not a governmental agency. In fact, we don't receive any federal funds. We're a small two-person staff, and we rely on an army of volunteers up in the parks. Most importantly, it's what people know about the parks that matters. National parks are owned by every one of us. They're owned by you and they're owned by me. They're common ground. They're not Republican, Democrat, or Libertarian. They're everyone's parks. National parks are also an economic boon to our country. When people visit from other countries, national parks are often high on their list of places to see. National parks offer all of us a place of hope for our future. They provide us with the spaces needed for renewal, for inspiration, for exploration. The only obstacle our parks face is a potential decline. And we as an organization are stepping up, we're stepping in to ensure the parks remain all that they are today. Washington's National Park Fund is providing the funding that is changing young lives through our climate change program. Youth who have never visited the parks are putting on packs and boots and traveling into the backcountry for 3 weeks at a time. They're learning the best methods for Leave No Trace. They're learning about how glaciers are measured and water and air quality is tested and analyzed. They're also learning how to remain safe in the backcountry. Thanks to funding provided by Washington's National Park Fund, the majestic elk that reside in Olympic National Park are being monitored. Funds are helping to monitor their movements, their lifestyles, and their eating habits. We provide a place where people make lasting gifts in memory of their loved ones who have died while climbing. In that person's memory, scholarships are given, shelters are constructed, and safety equipment is purchased. At one point in our history, we chose to join up with the National Park Foundation, thinking it would streamline our efficiencies. But we discovered that donors prefer giving directly to Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks through the fund. They appreciate the fact that Washington's National Park Fund is based right in Washington State. So after 2 years, we regained our independent 501c3 status. Since then, more than $1 million has been given back to the 3 national parks. With increased funding, we would continue developing our ongoing education and outreach programs that partner each park with urban youth agencies and schools. We'd improve visitor experiences through better signage, technology, and family-friendly programs. We would establish support for hiring organizations like Student Conservation Association, Earth Corps, and Youth Conservation Corps interns for each park. We'd also create an endowment for both trail maintenance and volunteer programs. We'd restore buildings, we'd preserve archives, and establish an education institute for Mount Rainier National Park. The fund would also establish low-emission bus service within each park, which in turn would reduce the carbon footprint. Internally, we'd revamp our website and database. We would hire a dedicated grant writer as well as a development officer to be of service to each park. Finally, we'd host quarterly town hall meetings, bringing people together to learn about the call to action. When invited to do some stretch thinking, we could build spaces within each park that provide increased opportunities for educational programs and volunteer training. We could provide funding for our archival programs. There's a great deal of historical data, fascinating materials, photos, and findings that are sitting on shelves in a cold garage. They need care, but this falls far below the priority list for most parks. Finally, we'd like to offer scholarships to rangers, scientists, and researchers. Today, park staff is paid significantly less than their counterparts in the business sector, but they work for the parks because they love being of service. Our backcountry rangers sometimes give up their lives in their search and rescue efforts. We'd like to believe that with a little extra training and better equipment, tools, and clothing, we could make their jobs a little bit safer.